Saudi Arabia and India have agreed to deepen energy ties and cooperate more closely on tourism and technology amid the global economic turbulence. Their leaders met as both countries look to support their economies against US tariff policies that threaten to stunt growth. And we can get analysis now with Bloomberg's energy reporter Anthony Paola, who joins us from Dubai. Anthony, I just wonder how significant this agreement is, because we've got so many of these bilateral talks happening around the world, catalysed by Donald Trump. We've discussed a few of them already. How important is this one?
Yeah, good morning, Lizzie. Exactly as you say, there are a lot of these deals, and we've seen a lot of these announced between Gulf countries, between India over the years, over recent years even. So let's wait and see what comes out of these agreements. So these are agreements that the countries will want to work together to deepen ties. And of course, there is a strong tie in terms of energy supply between Saudi Arabia and India. Saudi is a major oil supplier there. Now, some of the Gulf supplies have gone down into India, as India looks to buy more Russian supply because those barrels have come in more cheaply on a spot basis. So that's impacted some of the supply. But Saudi Arabia is a really reliable, long-term supplier of oil to many of the Asian countries, India in particular. So that's going to continue. There were some discussions around some refinery plans there. And of course, Saudi Arabia and India do want to work together on refineries, but we have seen discussion of this before without actual refinery projects materializing. And of course, we are in a pretty tricky spot for the market with oil under pressure and some of the refinery margins down. So it's not an amazing time to invest in a refinery at the moment. Of course, these are long-term decisions, so we'll see how that does play out, Lizzie, whether that does become an actual project.
Yeah, I mean, we're asking that same question about lots of these pledges of investment, including from companies into the US at the moment. When they've got these long horizons, will they last beyond Trump's term? But I also know that you've just had J.D. Vance in India, the US Vice President, of course. Now you've had Modi in Saudi Arabia. Is it fair to say that India's kind of hedging its bets and weathering the trade turbulence better than some of its rivals?
Yeah, of course, the U.S. is a major trade partner for India, so that's an important relationship for them to keep up. But they've always had this relationship with Saudi Arabia there, and they're more dependent really on Saudi for oil. From the U.S., they could in the future get LNG as LNG comes onto the market more increasingly from the U.S. Some of the lighter oil that's supplied from U.S. shale is very important. But of course, it's, the U.S. and Saudi are also allied countries, as is India. So it's kind of a meeting of minds in that way. Of course, the Trump administration has great admiration for the Saudis and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as he does for Prime Minister Modi in India. So it is kind of a meeting of minds in terms of moving forward with economy. Both Saudi Arabia and India have huge growth plans and lots of work to do. So they need each other. They need the U.S. and they need to stay in the good books of the U.S. Of course, the Gulf countries got that minimum 10% tariff, which of course isn't good for them, but better than a lot of countries. And remember, the Gulf countries are very linked to the United States because the currencies here are pegged to the dollar. Oil being traded in the dollar is the main international currency. So they're very linked to the U.S. economy and to U.S. interest rates as well, and mainly that oil price. So they're very dollar-linked economies here, Lizzie.